Heart Gold and Soul Silver are widely considered the best mainline Pokemon games ever made. So when a ROM hack takes those foundations and modernizes them rather than just remaking them, it does have a lot to live up to. Here's how Pokemon Heart and Soul holds up and whether it's worth your time. Heart and Soul is a GBA ROM hack based on Pokemon Heart Gold and Soul Silver, set in the Johto region. But to call it a demake or a recreation would be underselling it. This is a modernized version of one of the best Pokemon games ever made, and the key word here is modernized. Before we get into the review, here's my full run through of the game, which I've condensed down into a few short clips and put them together. I'll keep it moving, but I wanted to show you the key moments that shaped my experience, as well as what you can expect when you first start the game. So it does start like a very typical Pokemon game, exactly like Heart Gold and Soul Silver with the Professor. We're choosing our starter here. I end up going with Cyndaquil. I'm a big fan of Cyndaquil. I think Totodile is a great starter too. For some reason, Chikorita never really caught on with me. I didn't really like it as a Pokemon, and I felt Meganium was very weak as well. So I don't know how you guys feel, but Cyndaquil is the one to go for. On another playthrough, I might have picked Totodile. Unfortunately, it will never be Chikorita. So this is the first route. As you can see, it's going in this Generation 3 art style. There are some new NPCs all across the map, and if you guessed the favorite day of the week correctly, they'll give you some key battle items. As you can see, I got the Silk Scarf. And this is one of the things I actually didn't like about the game. So a quick note here on the graphics while we're in these early routes. The overworld is firmly Generation 3 in its art style, and that's not a deal breaker at all. However, I do think with the plethora of ROM hacks that there are right now, there are lots of games with much better visuals, and this can be a big thing for some people. Some of the tile set changes that the developers of Heart and Soul have made work really well. For example, you might see later on when we're near Tin Tower, there are some lanterns. These work really, really well. However, I do think, as you may have seen in Cherry Grove City, the blossom trees, I do like their pink colour, but I just feel they look very out of place against the rest of the Generation 3 aesthetic. It's a small nitpick, but it's worth mentioning. So back to the playthrough, we've got our first evolution of Cyndaquil into Quilava. We're now at the Sprout Tower, which again, they've remade in this Heart and Soul remake, and it's very straightforward, especially if you've picked Quilava at this point. It's very easy to get through this battle. I think I'm training some of the rest of my Pokemon here. So I've got a Pidgey here. He'll go on to become a Pidgeot later in the run. This is one of our key team members. We get the puzzle, the HM for Flash, and you can see me struggling to do the Kabuto puzzle here. Normally, I don't use fossil Pokemon on runs, and I think this is another thing that the team in Heart and Soul have done very well, is you can not only get the fossil Pokemon early, as in the actual fossil item, but the revival service for it works as well. So I actually ended up adding Kabuto to my team. Normally I don't use Kabuto. I don't tend to like him because he's got a 4 times weakness to grass. However, in this run, as you'll see later on, he comes in very handy with a good attack stat and good move coverage. So this is our first gym badge here. We're just taking on Leader Faulkner. One of the other things I really liked about the game was the XP share. I know it's a bit controversial. Lots of people feel like it ruined the games after it was introduced in X and Y, but I feel it really allows you to raise a good number of different Pokemon, especially with the weaker ones early on in the game. They really do gain the benefit of the XP share, and it also means that later on in the game, when you do change your team around, you don't have to worry too much about Pokemon that are left behind. So now we've got our first gym badge. This is our encounter with the Kimono Girls in Violet City, and actually we've added a Mareep to the team. I feel like Ampharos is very common in a Johto run through, but he deserves it. He's a good Pokemon, and he's got very good move coverage as well, with good attack stats. So this is the Slowpoke well, and that's Kurt. Again, as you can see, they very faithfully created this. One of the big changes is actually the Apricorn system is replaced with berries, and that actually allows the balls to be created a lot easier. And the Apricorn trees will give you lots of berries, so you can get lots of Pokeballs as well from Cut. This is us getting the second gym badge and getting the rival battle in Azalea Town. Pidgey evolves into Pidgeotto, and we move forward through to Ilex Forest. The next part is, as you can imagine, fairly uneventful. Whitney's Miltank actually went down a lot easier than I was expecting. And before you know it, we are at Ekrutik City. We awoke the legendary beasts. We have met Usain, and we've got the fourth gym badge. This is the moment in the game, in Pokemon Heart and Soul, where you can actually choose whether you want your legendary to be Lugia or Ho-Oh. So between Ekrutik and Olivine City, there's a gentleman that will ask you. And we go on to get Jasmine's gym badge. We've also got Suicine that we've seen with Usain here as well. He decides to battle us. Sorry, I've got a very bad cough at the moment. So now we go on to get Chuck and his badge from Cyanwood City. And this is now the radio tower segment with Team Rocket. This is one of my favourite segments in the original game. I feel like it was done very well, both in the original games, and they've remade it very well here, including the Voltorbs, Giovanni's Password, and the Murkrow. They've remade it very, very well in the Generation 3 engine. And again, this is us joining forces with Lance to battle the Team Rocket, which is exactly what happens in the original game, so nothing you haven't really seen before. We go on to get the 7th gym badge from Price. I think there is normally, sometimes people say you can do it in a different order. I went for Price as our 7th gym badge, and we've now turned Kadabra into Alakazam, who will go on to be a powerhouse of the team. This is finishing the Team Rocket segment here. I think this is the last point of Team Rocket before the post game. So this is now where we fight Claire. She doesn't want to give us her gym badge, and we'll have to go to the Dragon's Den and answer some questions. So you'll see that coming up. Again, the art style here is really good. I feel it does work really well at some points. The Dragon's Den here comes across as very loomy, and it really suits the tone of this part of the game. So, like I said, the overworld graphics are not a deal breaker, but as I said, there's a few points where they feel slightly out of place. So, this isn't one of those times. This is now where we go to fight the Kimono Girls. We've got all of the gym badges. I think you have to fight 5 of them. They use the different evolutions, and eventually they give you the Clear Bell, which we can use to gain access to Tin Tower. So this is our obstructive guy, which we're going to get through now. And this is what I was saying before about the lanterns here. I feel like the lanterns, the trees, they worked really well here. And again, they've animated this all really well for a game that is originally Pokemon Emerald. So here we went on to capture Ho-Oh and move on with the rest of the game. So from here, we'll just go back to find Professor Elm and move on to Victory Road, Champion Lance. And you know the game is not complete without a good battle with Red. So you can watch all of that going on in the background, and I'm just going to come to my final thoughts about the game now. So as I mentioned in the footage that you'll see, the overworld graphics are very much Generation 3. I think it is one of the areas that does bring the game down, particularly if you've played a lot of ROM hacks around Fire Red, Emerald bases. You will have seen these graphics over and over again, and it can feed into the tedium that's associated with these games, which is a shame because this was a really, really fun game. And it's a bit of a nitpick, but it's one of the only areas that brought the game down. Quality of life and customization, this is where Pokemon Heart and Soul genuinely surprised me, and I think it stands apart from almost everything in the genre. You can't really call this a demake. It has lots of modern quality of life features like the XP share, reusable TMs. You can customize an awful lot of things like player and opponent EVs. You can customize the amount of XP that you gain from battles. You can customize the shiny rate. As you can When you start the game, actually, it will be a little bit overwhelming how many customization options you have, but it really does feed into a really positive gameplay experience, and I don't think there is a ROM hack that offers as many quality of life features as well as customization as this. You can also adjust the difficulty, which I think is very important because lots of games now cater towards those difficult and Nuzlocke challenges, but sometimes players like me just want an easy ride or something we can sink our teeth into between on-calls. As you can see now, going back to the gameplay, we've just beat Lance and we've entered the Hall of Fame. This is my final team here. Pupitar didn't become Tyranitar, actually. It takes that much experience to bring him up. So this is the end of the game. Of course, anyone who actually has played the game knows that this is not the end of the game, and we will now be going to Kanto, which you'll see us boarding the SS ticket shortly. So, going back to my thoughts, Johto's structure is well known, and Heart and Soul doesn't really reinvent this. It just makes it feel better to play, as I said, with lots of the modern quality of life features and the customization options. It feels that you can really focus on the battles and enjoy the gameplay experience, which is exactly how it should be. The story is a feature I comment on a lot of ROM hacks, but this is the basic Johto story. I'm not going to walk you through the plot because you either know it and you've played it before, or you can experience it yourself for the first time. What I will say is that the story does hold up, and I will also say that they have incorporated a lot of the events from Heart Gold and Soul Silver. You'll later on see in the video, but the Celebi and GS Ball event is there. There are also some events regarding Giovanni and his son as well. All of these were in Heart Gold and Soul Silver, but not in the originals, Gold, Silver and Crystal, and they've reinvented those quite well. They've also incorporated other legendaries like Groudon, Kyogre and Groudon, which are some of my favourite Pokemon to capture, so that was good as well. Overall, my verdict is that Pokemon Heart and Soul is one of the best ways to experience Johto in 2026. The customization alone puts it ahead of nearly every other ROM hack I've ever played, and the modern quality of life features mean it never feels dated, even if some of the visuals do. The overworld graphics are probably one of the weaker parts of this package, but they're a small price to pay, especially with how well everything else holds together. I would recommend you to play it if you love Johto and want to experience it with modern features and the freedom to tailor the difficulty to exactly how you want to play. I would say you should hold off if you're looking for something new. This is Johto through and through. If you want a fresh region or a new story, look elsewhere first. What I will say is, when you look at the graphics, the Generation 3 fatigue might hit you. However, I was pleasantly surprised at just how much fun I had playing this ROM hack. Just how easy it was to pick up and play between on-calls, how easy the battles flowed, and how the difficulty felt fair, and also how customizable it was. So I would definitely recommend you to check it out if you're on the fence. But if you've played Johto time and again and are looking for something entirely new, then maybe you should focus on that. The other thing I will say is that there are other Johto ROM hacks, and one of them is Pokemon GS Chronicles. I did want to compare this game to that, however, when I tried to play the game, it was just filled with bugs and it kept freezing. So maybe next time I'll be able to compare them and tell you guys what the ultimate Johto experience is. For now, as I said, if you're at all on the fence or you're missing Johto, then definitely give this game a shot and let me know what you think.